when you shake hands and you shaking hands and kissing babies, when you shake a white guy's hand, is it like this? Hey, how's it going? Appreciate your vote. And then when there's a black guy, just like, my dog, what's up? Bring it in right here. Is there any of that going on?
That's the
Obama's got caught on tape so many times. He's
the best person to ever do it, though.
You know what, the Peanut, though? I actually think it's just it's the way they put their hand out.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm just saying
It's their fault.
No. Okay.
We putting it on them.
So like we start like this.
Yeah, it's different. I agree. I agree with you saying.
But there'll be some.
It's straight out there.
There'll be some guys with some flavor to them. You know what I mean? And they'll come in like that too. So like, hey, all right, we're good. Let's go. You know?
Oh, I love that. What's up, everybody? I'm Peanut Tillman, and this is the NFL Players Second Acts podcast. With me, as always, is my trusty co-host, Roman Harper. What's up?
What's up? You have not called me any weird nicknames today, so it must be a below average day for you. So I'm really excited about our next guest, though. I've got to watch this guy a ton on TV, and my wife hates it because she does not watch politics. So
you bring him in. You do the intro. You bring our guest in.
Super excited about this guy.
He's been talking about this guy all day. He was like, man, I'm forget Tim Brown and all these other cats.
I was. All right. He was a linebacker for 4 seasons with the Tennessee Titans, and after football, he became a civil rights attorney. He served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives for the state of Texas. He was also voted most likely to succeed in high school. Shout out to my man Thomas doing his research on the side. Guys, everybody give a warm welcome to Mr. Colin Allred.
Hey, appreciate you.
Go red. Go red.
All right. Blue. So, did you live up to most likely to succeed in high school?
Oh, man. So, y'all, that's a deep cut.
I just want to know.
Cut, right.
I didn't win that award. So
did you not?
I did not. I did not win that.
I don't know. I mean,
I won best all around. I didn't even win most athletic.
I got class clown.
Totally.
Well,
I got it.
I believe that.
Class clown and Mr. Athletic.
Yeah. No, I don't know if I've done it yet.
Okay.
Right. I feel like I'm still going. But I was raised by a single mother, and my goal was to be a good father. Right. And so among all the things that we've talked about, you know, being a civil rights lawyer, playing in the NFL, being in Congress, I think I'm proudest of that. I got 2 boys who I'm, raising the right way. And, so to me, that is success, right? So I don't know if my high school would have marked that as as what it would be, but that makes me feel like I'm doing something right. Yeah.
So if you were in high school, let's go back to high school. If a coach or teacher or principal would have said, you're going to be an NFL player. If one person said you're going to be a civil rights attorney, and the other person said you're going to be a congressman, which one would you have believed?
I was class president, right? So I think they might have thought maybe at some point I go into public service, right?
Yeah. And
my mom was a teacher.
Okay.
And she didn't care at all about how I did in sports. She just wanted to see what the report card said.
Right.
That's most moms.
Yeah. Right. So I think she would have been like, okay, you're going to go to law school. So I actually think the most unlikely one was to play in the NFL.
Right?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was not my plan.
Okay.
And we can talk about this a little bit, but I had applied to law school, and agents started calling me.
Really?
Right? And saying they wanted to represent me. And I was like, in what? I'm going to law school. And they're like, no, you're going to have a shot to play in the NFL. And they had to send me my pre-draft report.
That said you believe it?
Yeah, it said it was a likely 5th to 7th round pick. I wasn't like you guys, right? And so they were saying, you might even get it in the final rounds, or you might even sneak in. And I was like, oh, really? I guess I'll give it a shot. Yeah. And I had to defer my law school just to go try out, And so that was the more unlikely, I think, of the 3.
Now, had you already gotten a letter into law school, or were you just applying?
So I was applying.
Okay.
Right. Because like the way it works, you take your LSAT, and I took that the summer for my senior year. So I'd do summer training, and then I'd go study for my LSAT. Right. And I was captain of the team. So I had all, responsibilities and all that. But I would get my studying in along with summer school. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
And then I took my LSAT, and then I had done well enough, and I was graduating, in the fall semester. So I could just get out of there, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it was all planned. It was all like, okay, I've got my college paid for. This is great. I'm off to law school, right? And then these folks came in and said, no, you should try this out. So it was a different, big swerve there.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me this. Were a lot of guys, a lot of your teammates in front of you or before you, were they all going to the NFL?
Right.
Because sometimes, like with me, when I was at Alabama, we were there during probation. We were not great. And so a lot of guys that came before me didn't go to the
That's
NFL.
right.
So I wasn't in a place where I was thinking like, oh,
I remember those years.
I'm going to the NFL. Like it was not like that.
Right.
And so it's really hard to imagine yourself in those places unless you know somebody that's in them.
Right. We had like one guy who'd been like a 7th round D tackle.
Right.
Picked up. We had another guy who'd made it like for a little while, like an undrafted free agent. Like we just didn't have very many
That's what I was
NFL players
too.
in my immediate orbit. Like this was rough years at Baylor, right? And we were playing in the Big 12 at the time when this is the old Big 12 in Missouri
was running
and,
it. Yeah.
and Colorado and Nebraska in the north. We had Texas and A&M and all the big ones in the south, and they were just beating up on us a lot, right? And so it just didn't seem like a likely outcome. And I do think that you're right, though. Then having not seen that path, I was just thinking, well, I'll just get my degree and I'll do my best, and then I'll say thank you for the degree and get out of here and go to law school.
So out of all those things, all right, Peanut asked you which one you would have chose.
Yeah.
What did you learn from all these different roles, from football to being a congressman to also a lawyer as well?
Yeah.
Like, what have you learned from each aspect of your journey and path?
I don't know what kind of athletes my boys will be, but I just want them to do sports, and play sports, because for me, everything has been based on what I learned. And I played 3 sports in high school, football, baseball, basketball. For me, I just go from season to season to season, and I never really lifted weights. I was just a natural athlete, and that's what I enjoyed. But, to me, the determination and the understanding that I could outwork somebody was what has put me in good stead in everything else.
Right.
And I always tell young people, they'll ask me, how did you get here? What'd you do? And I said, well, I was just the hardest worker in the room. After I got cut after my first year as an undrafted free agent, and I got cut in a training camp, I felt like I shouldn't have been. And the GM got fired at the end of the year, and the next day they re-signed me. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna go back and do this again and put off my law school again, I'm gonna have to do it a little differently.
Right.
And so I didn't just do the team workouts; I didn't do my own workout. And during training camp, we go 3 strings deep, right?
Yeah.
We do first D, second D, third D. On second D, I would do outside linebacker. On third D, I'd do middle linebacker, and then I'd go to special teams and do all the special teams. So I was playing every position. I was practicing more, and so to me, I just figured, well, I can just outwork folks.
Yeah.
And that's put me in good stead and everything else. In law school, I wasn't the smartest. I had neck surgery, and I had a fusion. C5, C6, and we can talk a little bit about it. But,
We're going to.
Yeah, but and so less than a year after getting off the operating table, I was in law school, and I'm sitting there in these classes with all these kids who are
Younger.
seem so younger. I'm 6 years older than all of them at least, and I've been playing football, and I feel like kind of like just a total outlier,
Right.
And I walk in, we're too big for everything, right? And I thought they're all smarter than me. I thought, well, I bet I can work hard at this though and get this down, right?
Yeah.
And I've always been somebody like that, where if I can figure out what my job is, then I'll work at that so hard that even if I might not be the most talented at it, it'll be okay.
Now, how different was it for you going into your second year? Because you just said I was special teams, I was Mike, Will, Sam. You had played all those positions. Did you do anything like that when you were in college, having to play all 3 positions? Did you have to work that hard to get what you had to get to Baylor, or just even in the league? Like what was the difference?
No, I mean, in college, I was like, I'm not covering kicks, right? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Don't do that, man. Don't do that. Don't do that. Right? That's why Thomas put that question in there. Like, I know that's why he put that question in there.
Right.
Because of stop laughing. Stop.
Dude,
Stop.
Me. I'm not a special teams.
You're not covering kicks, right? Yeah.
He didn't play not a damn special teams.
thing.
I played 13 years. I played all 13 years on I played starting on defense.
No, I remember, Peanut, you were on, yes.
But I played the special teams like my whole entire career, and he was just like,
yes.
nah, stop. Sean.
Rome, you would be good at special teams too.
I'm telling you.
It was never asked of me.
Oh, yeah.
And so
right?
now I sit on the
Is that right?
sidelines and say it's overrated.
It was never asked of me.
It was not asked of me. I never.
Oh, man.
I
But
never went down that path.
But did it come natural for you in college to where you was just like, nah, I'm not doing that?
Well, no, it wasn't that I would have done it if they'd asked me, right? But then they were having me do other stuff. And I think when I got to the NFL, I just realized it's just the more you do.
Yes.
Just the more you can do. And so at the time we were running a 4-3 defense. And so I figured, I can't just be a Mike linebacker because, my value is not going to be that high there. I'm going to be, as you said, Sam and Will, and I'm going to learn every position.
Yeah.
So that if anybody has a question, they can ask me about it, right? And then I'm going to do every special teams. I'm going to be a core special teamer to where when cut time comes, they're going to say, well, Allred's dumb and slow, but we can't get rid of him.
Yeah.
Because we have to sign two or three guys to replace him, right? I mean, I remember I never missed a game through anything other than injury, right? So if I was healthy, I was never a clean scratch, right? But I missed some games with injury, and our defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, he'd get me and say, well, why don't you come over here and help me with the signs, because we're doing both this is before we do the audio into the helmet, right? Because we're trying to mess with Peyton Manning, and we're trying to send some different signals in, and I know the defense well enough that we can just play off each other. And so it's just the more you can do, right? Like you come into the building, what value you bring into it. And I have carried that into everything else too, right? Which is just, what all can we do to provide value here to make sure that, people feel like this is a good investment, And I think the NFL is a good teacher in that way, because, cuts are not always fair.
No.
I mean, we've all seen
numbers games.
I've seen really good players get cut.
Good players.
Like, I just don't understand it. But
yeah, and I see some guys I played with, they get cut by us and they go somewhere else and they balling out.
Yes,
you know what I mean? And I'm like, but it was just a numbers game that we couldn't keep 6 receivers or whatever it was at that time because of injuries or whatever. And so you just got to have everything at the table so that when they're sitting there, it's a tough decision,
So now one thing I want to know is I want to talk about, so you went to Cal Berkeley and got your civil rights attorney degree.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
Which is called a JD for Juris Doctor, right?
That's
or
right.
a doctor of jurisprudence.
There you go.
Correct?
There you go. Good job,
This
bro.
is his first time reading the law.
That which is in the Bill of Rights, correct? Well, jurisprudence is.
Just ask the question. Just ask the question.
It's all right.
Well,
Reading is not fundamental.
It's all about.
Just ask the question.
I was just really excited about that part.
Yeah.
And now I guess a big thing right now that's going on with our government is about habeas corpus.
Yeah, that's right.
And so all these
Yeah.
things kind of being tied up together.
No, that's right.
And so
Now you speak of my lingo.
this is your lingo. And I did a little bit of homework, guys. And so like knowing all these things.
Yeah.
And why did you go all the way out to Cal to do it?
Yeah, right.
That's probably the first thing I want to know.
Yeah.
And then why did you decide I want to be not just any attorney, but a civil rights attorney?
Yeah. Well, my aunt, who had helped raise me, her whole thing was that she grew up in Brownsville, Texas, the very tip of Texas at the Mexico border with my mom. And she wanted to go to Cal. And she had family out there and she'd visited them once, but she couldn't afford it. And so she went to UT. And her whole life, she's like, I'm going to get back to Cal some way. Right. And it ended up being through me. Right.
Yeah.
So, and, she was one of these people who, if she says to do something, you're probably going to do it. Right. And so she put the bug in my head that I should go to Cal for law school. And I was like, okay, and I went and visited and I thought, this is fine. I'll go. And as I said, I had a long process where I deferred my admittance and all that.
Correct.
But I knew I wanted to do civil rights and specifically with a focus on voting rights. Because I felt that there was so much going on in Texas in particular, where folks were being discriminated against in certain cases or where they just weren't being given a chance. And as an athlete, I think that bothers you.
Yeah.
Because we believe in meritocracy.
Yeah.
We believe in level
Earning
playing
it,
fields,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
We
we
believe that if you're doing the right things, you're working hard, playing by the rules, you should be able to, get ahead. And I just think that just, to me, that motivated me to think we got to do something about this. And especially in voting rights, I would never ask anybody who they were going to vote for. I just want them to vote, right? It wasn't really political, although I think it's become that way because it seems like there's more people who sometimes want to talk about voting in that way. But to me, it's just be engaged, be involved, have a chance to be involved, right? And so, I was doing that work, and I ended up working in the Obama administration, and I thought, public service is something that can be noble.
How did
right?
how did that happen? How did that come about? When you were in school at law school, you were just they're signing up. You're signing people up to vote.
Yeah. So I had interned in the White House while I was in law school. I remember when the Ravens won the Super Bowl, and we had just played them the year before, and they came, and I had trained with some of these guys, like Ndamukong Suh, and
they're like, "What are you doing?"
And I'm dapping them up in the White House, and everybody's like, "Who is this guy?" You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Hey man, I played against these guys. Like, I know like Ed and Ray and all them, and they were all there." And this is the Obama years, so everybody's excited about being at the White House, right? And so I interned in the White House, and that kind of got me to see that public service could be something that you could help people.
Absolutely.
And I thought, I'm only here because people stepped up for me. Like we all have our stories. I mean, I could have easily just been a statistic, right? Just another kid didn't know his father, didn't make it, but people had kind of gone out of their way to help me, and I wanted to repay that, and so I worked in the administration, and then I thought, well, the guy who's representing my hometown here in Dallas, I didn't think he kind of reflected the community that I knew. But he was somebody who nobody thought could ever be beaten in an election because no one even ran against him the previous election. And I was like, well, I think I could beat him. And so I decided to run for Congress, and that's how I ended up in that crazy game.
Now, I'm not saying as a lawyer, but as an attorney, specifically with the emphasis of voter rights, are you just appalled that when sometimes you see an opponent or a district or someone infringe upon someone's rights, meaning like, oh yeah, we're just gonna, like, prime example, Georgia.
Yep.
They have voter registration, but voter suppression.
Yep.
Like, they are just flat out just like, nope, we're doing this, we're doing that. Like, what runs through your mind when you see this and you know the law and you know all the rules?
Yeah.
And you're just like, you can't do that. Like,
yeah,
what are y'all doing?
That's right.
How frustrating is that for you?
I mean, I just think it's un-American.
Yeah.
I think our story isn't what we were always got it right. It's that we've been trying to perfect our union, right?
Right.
And I think it's okay to lose an election. I think it's okay that the person you wanted to win didn't win.
Right.
Yeah.
What I don't think is okay if you try to stop someone from voting in the first place.
Right.
Right? Because you don't want to hear what they have to say. That we can't do in a democracy. Right? As you start doing that, you're picking and choosing who really is somebody and who's not, who's allowed at the table and who's not. And the whole thing we've been trying to do in this is to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. And I think it leads people to be cynical about their government, about their elected officials. They're like, well, the whole thing is rigged. In some ways, you might think, well, kind of right. You have a gerrymandered district.
I was going to say that's
right?
That's the big thing.
The result is set before the election, right? Or you kick 2 or 3 million people off the voting rolls and right before an election starts. I mean, in some ways, you're right, but then it leads to cynicism about the whole project that we had as a country.
Right.
And to me, it's just so upsetting. I think as an athlete, you just think, like, let's have you can have the game, but you're not going to try and tilt the game in your favor by cheating. Right. And I also think in this case, it's also often happening to the most vulnerable people. People who don't have somebody to speak for them.
So you talked about earlier how football has prepared you, or team sports.
Yeah.
It's kind of prepared you to be able to come into every room and looking like, okay, how do I add value to this room? What was it like the first time when you go into the house?
Yeah.
Where it's like you walk in, you clearly don't, you're going to carry yourself with a different sense of aura. That's how football players are. We go in this room. All right, whether I'm a freshman or I'm a rookie, I got to come in this room. All right, where's my seat going to be?
Right.
You look around, you measuring people up.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, let's do this, right?
Yeah.
What was that like? The first time you go in that room or the house and you got to figure out your spot. Like, kind of walk us through, because none of us have probably ever done that.
I have not.
I've never yet. Walk us
Safe
through
to say
that.
I've not done that.
I mean, I walked in and thought, there's a bunch of legends here. Like John Lewis.
Yeah, for sure.
Was there, and I was friends with John Lewis.
Yeah.
Right? He campaigned for me here in Dallas. And then I got to, serve with him. People like Elijah Cummings and, so many people who had been through so much, had done so much in the country. I
Well,
knew so
Bernie
much.
Sanders has been in for how long?
Yeah, right. I mean, forever.
forever.
But then some of these folks,
Don't even give a year.
some of these
Forever.
folks, they've done incredible things, but also so much history has happened here,
Yes.
right? And so I felt a sense of that. But I also felt like, I need to figure out what my job is here and how I can be most effective, because it's a big group. 435 representatives, 100 senators, and so you're kind of thinking, how can I add value, to your point, in this setting? And to me, I just kind of like, I'm going to focus on my district, on my community, on the people I represent, and I'm going to try and not be one of these people who is super partisan, who's kind of contributing to the noise.
Yes.
Because, we know this. Like, we got workhorses and we got show horses in football, right? You guys were both, Rome, I don't know, actually. But no, I'm just kidding. Y'all were both workhorses.
Absolutely.
That's why you had the careers that you had, And we see guys who were talented, who bounced around, because people don't want to keep them on the team. And we know why oftentimes, right? It's the same thing in the House. And it's the same thing in the Congress, where you'll see there's people who are actually grinding away, trying hard to pass responsible laws, to help the people they represent, but also the country as a whole. And then there's some other folks who are just out there just lobbing grenades, trying to get attention on social media, trying to go on the cable shows and say the most outrageous thing they can, right? And they talk about it, that, I'm going to say this and I'm going to get them all riled up, right? And it's all game.
Gamesmanship.
It's a game for them. Unfortunately, it's not a game for real people.
Absolutely.
Right? And when you grew up the way I did, that these decisions are going to have a downhill effect, right? And so I figured out that pretty quickly, that there was two different types, and I wanted to associate myself with the working folks who were really putting in that effort. And I did the best I could. And I think that's all I can ask for.
So I know at one point I've been to a bunch of schools and different classes and things like that, and I sit down at these tables and I'm sitting next to someone who is a Harvard grad, and then I'm sitting next to someone who's a lawyer, and I'm just like, man, I'm sitting between these two smart cats. And then they start teaching the information, and you're like, oh, I got this.
Yeah, that's right.
I got a 95. You got a 94. You got a 90.
That's right.
I'm just as smart.
That's right.
As everybody else. At what point did you realize I'm just as smart as this legend or this rah-rah person?
That's right. Pina, that's such a good question, brother, because, I remember during your career, I'd see you sitting on a route, and we played against the Bears. Actually, my old college coach, Brick Haley, was y'all's D-line coach. Yeah.
I remember Brick,
he was a good dude.
Country guy.
Country guy. Yeah, he was definitely
always
country.
had a dip in his mouth.
Yeah, always had a dip in his mouth. Yeah.
He might have been from Alabama.
Right. And I still remember a play.
Can't even deny it. Can't deny it.
I still remember a play when Ed Reed, we were watching tape, and it was because we played the Colts twice a year, right? And so Peyton versus Ed, and the ball snapped, and Rome, you'll appreciate this. It's too high a safety look, and Ed doesn't move for like the first 5 seconds of the play, and I'm like, why isn't he moving? And he's just waiting. And as soon as Peyton comes out like this, he's breaking, and he takes it to the house for 6. And what I mean by that is, we're smart, right? These guys, you guys are smart. Like we were making adjustments on the fly to a blitz, right? We're doing 2 different coverages on any given play, right? We got a blitz coming this way, but if they motion that way, we're changing the whole thing, and we're doing it on the fly like that.
And everybody gets it.
Right, and everybody gets it. Even Albert Hainsworth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Everybody gets it.
Right? I'm tapping them, get over, you know? But I mean, like, we have that ability, but I think sometimes what football players in particular would do is we'll just leave it there and say, well, I was good at that. It's like, no, you can be good at all those other things too, right? And I do think that it took me a little time in law school before I realized that, where I sit there and thought, I'm not getting this. I was like, well, I didn't get the defense at first either. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't understand, some of the zone concepts that we were doing at first either. But if you work at it, you will. And I do think that, especially with athletes, I try and tell them, carry over that determination and that work ethic to whatever you're doing next. You're going to be fine. Trust me, you've been working harder than everybody around you. because we went to school and we did sports in the afternoon, and then we had a game on the weekend, and then we did our homework. You know what I mean? And so it took me. I remember I had a little bit of an identity crisis coming out of the league and going to law school, because, like I said, it was so abrupt. Like, I hurt my neck, and I was in law school very quickly, and so it felt just so fast. And I still felt like an athlete. And I kind of tell people I felt like I wasn't like a normal person. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you felt you were walking around.
I went back to school, so I totally get it.
Yeah, right. You didn't feel like everybody else there.
No.
But I did finally realize, I just got to treat this like it's my playbook, you know? And I just got to dive into it. And it'll be okay to make mistakes, right? And once I figured that out, I thought, actually, I think I have an advantage on them.
Yeah.
Because I've had to do some of this that they haven't had to do under pressure. And I do think that, you know, in the end, that's how it worked out.
So I want to talk about coming in, leaving the league and then going into law school. So you hurt your neck.
Yeah.
2000, I think it was October of 2010.
Yep.
You're playing linebacker. I was actually playing the Cowboys.
That's right.
Was it Marion Barber?
That's
and
right.
Martellus Bennett, my old teammate. Comes through. I don't know what the play was, but
it was a power running play.
Yeah. And
pull the guard, you know, tight end blocks down, So I've been having stingers, you know, and I mean, we call them stingers, but it's really kind of nerve damage, right? It's
true.
Football's funny, you know.
It's true. You feel it in your arm, but your nerves,
your nerves is the problem.
Your arms over here dangling because you can't feel it. Yeah.
And so I would always be doing like this on the sideline, because once I get a stinger, I couldn't feel my fingers, you know. And I remember the first time it happened, I couldn't close my hand, and I was like, this is not good, you know. And it had been going on for about a year and a half, and I had missed all of training camp pretty much because I had had a severe stinger. And I was really happy that they'd kept me. You know, it was my fifth year fourth year playing, but fifth year with them. You know, as an undrafted guy, but they still thought I had the value. You know, and so it was our fifth game, and it had just been bothering me the whole year. And I did have a bad feeling about it going into the game, because my family was going to be there, and I thought this would be really bad if this was my last game. And then Martellus was blocking me into the tackle, so I made the tackle. But for me, I was getting stingers when I had a certain way, my head went a certain way. And so it went that way, and it just shut down my whole right side. And it was like it was on fire. And Martellus was actually on top of me in the pile, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I don't think so, you know. And after the game, my mom came up to me and she was like, "So what about next week?" And I was like, "I don't think it's going to be in next week, Mom, because I think I need to get this looked at." And so we had the MRI and everything, and it showed what I thought it showed, you know, which was a bulging disc pressing on the nerve. I had some bone spurs in the nerve canal, so my nerve was kind of snaking its way out. So every time I did this, I could give myself a stinger, you know. And they said, "You're going to need surgery." And so I got the surgery, but that was the year of the lockout.
Yeah.
And we didn't have an off-season program.
So you couldn't rehab there.
Right. So I was rehabbing at home, working on my own, and I decided to just go ahead and reapply to law school. And then the Titans didn't re-up me. My contract had expired, and they didn't re-sign me. But the Vikings called, and they basically offered, if you want to come and try and make the team, you can. You know, it was one of those kind of like 1 year and show if you still can make it. But I kind of felt like a linebacker with a bad neck, you know, a little bit like a pianist with a bad hand, you know, like it's not really going to work. Yeah. And my aunt, again, was like, "You've already had the neck. What else is it going to take?" And I thought, well, okay, she's right. And so I decided to go to law school. And so that was how it went, you know, and I felt at peace with it, though. I really did, because I had proved that I could play in the league, which I wanted to prove. And I felt like I had started games in the league. I had played in playoff games. Like, none of that had been guaranteed to me, you know. And I didn't want to have something worse happen to where, you know, my life afterwards would be impacted.
I want to know this, because you talked about feeling comfortable in these spaces, and you've been in a lot of really cool rooms, whether it's NFL, being a lawyer or an attorney, to where, you know, where now you served our country as a congressman as well. At what point because you didn't feel comfortable in any of these rooms at first.
Yeah.
At what point, or how did you learn to give yourself grace to be able to give your enough time to all of a sudden feel comfortable? I think that's one thing as a lot of males we struggle with is, we do a lot of self-blaming, a lot of beating our own selves down. And at some point, you got to be able to give yourself grace to be able to mess up.
That's right.
Pick myself up and continue to go.
Right.
And so how have you been able to do that and at all these different points in your life?
That's such a good point because I can still tell you mistakes I made my sophomore year in college. The play, the down, the distance, everything, I can tell you what, how I messed up that man coverage, right? And I think that's natural for us. We're self-critical. We have a lot of accountability in our sport.
Which is great.
We're gonna watch the tape the next day and everybody's going to see it, right? The coach might even put it on in front of everybody, and laser point you, and I do think that I learned to kind of sit in my uncertainty and to not react to everything and to kind of let it come to me. And I kind of think about it like in baseball, where if you're just trying to find your pitch, right? And you might not swing at the first one. You might not like the off-speed stuff, but then the pitch is going to come to you. And then that's when you swing, right? And you have to be confident enough in yourself to think, that's not my pitch, right? I could throw myself into that, but I don't know as much about it as I'd like to.
Right.
I'm gonna come back to that. Right. I'm gonna wait for the right opportunity, and I think that's something that, with maturity, is kind of I've arrived at, where I don't feel anymore like I have to prove anything to anybody. And I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Like I've done the hardest things I could do, right? And if you don't like it, that's fine. But I don't have to prove anything to you, right? And I do think for young people, for athletes, we spend our whole lives, being on, working at something and being under so much scrutiny that we think that everything in life is going to be like that. And it's not. We've already been through the most scrutinized thing you're going to do, right? I mean, I remember my linebacker coach would, on the first play, he'd always look at your first step. Right? And he'd say, why'd you step that way? And he'd rewind it forward. Mm-hmm. Of you stepping this way, 100 times. Like, why are we watching that?
I already messed up.
You saw it. It was yesterday, but they're trying to drill those details into you. And I just think that we've done that. So there's nothing else that we can't do. Right? And so you just got to be comfortable with it and sit in that uncertainty and say, okay, I'm away from my pitch.
You're an awesome attorney. You're a great civil rights attorney. You got your law degree. And you're helping people. At what point did you decide to get into politics versus just helping people in the courtroom?
Yeah. I think it was when I started to feel like I couldn't do enough just as a lawyer, that I was still having to apply the law instead of helping to make it.
Yeah.
And that if the law was being written unfairly, that there's nothing I could do to overcome it.
Right.
And so I started to feel like, okay, well, maybe I need to take this a step further and see what we can do about getting the law in the right place from the beginning. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just not a very political person. Like I'm not very partisan. I think a lot of athletes were not,
No.
We don't. I would vote for anybody who I think I share values with and who I appreciate, right? But politics is, you know what I mean? And so I've always been a little bit mismatched with that. Yeah. Right. To where you got to run in a setting.
You got to pick a side.
In which it's very delineated and divided up. Right. And that's not my personality. But I do think there are people out there who that's what they're looking for.
Right. That
they also don't wake up every day thinking about things from a Democratic or Republican perspective, but from their own family's perspective. Right. And I think they're out there, and I think they're hoping that there'll be a return to people who are thinking about them first instead of just whatever the partisan issue of the moment is, right? And so actually, once I got elected, that helped me be more effective in Congress because my Republican colleagues sensed that I didn't think that they were the devil, that I wasn't going to try and put them on blast, and that they could work with me, and that we could actually get things done. And so I ended up being the most bipartisan Texan in the entire Congress. And that just was, to me, that was just about trying to get things done, right? I still have my values, and I'm not going to sacrifice those, right? But not everything has to be a fight, right? At some point, training camp ends. At some point.
And then we become the same team.
And then we're on the same team. Exactly, right? Yes, we competed hard. But now we're on the same team, and the other teams are around the country, around the world, as I see it, right?
Yeah.
And we got to look out for Team, America, right? I just think, unfortunately, and I say this all the time, I wish that every member of Congress had played team sports, because not all of them did, and it's very evident. You know what I mean?
I can only imagine when you get in that room, because the same exact the example that you gave about, I just couldn't do enough. I didn't feel like I was being able to help enough people. Me and my boys joke, but that's how villains are created.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No,
like,
you're not wrong.
You know what I mean? That's how villains are created.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I can't.
It's like Killmonger, right?
Yeah, Killmonger. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Bruce Wayne became Batman because he was just like, something happened to his parents, and you just go over, and the next thing you know.
Yeah.
And so what would you tell the average listener and viewer that has that's what they think every congressperson is? They have a bad taste in everybody in our government right now.
Yeah.
They think they see them all the same. They're all just,
Yeah.
And I don't believe that.
Yeah, that's right.
And so what would you do to help me sell to everybody else that they're not?
Yeah. I think we got to fix the kind of the incentive structure. Well, what's the incentive structure we have as athletes, right? We work hard.
We win.
We're going to see that show up on the field and a win in our pocketbook in terms of what the money we're able to make, what we're able to provide for our family, right? And so we then think, I'm going to work even harder. You think you saw me work hard? I'm going to show you I can do even more, right? But the incentive structure has gotten now to where we're not incentivizing public servants, and we want to see people reach across the aisle and lower the temperature and not pit people against each other. We're giving the most attention to the loudest voices and the ones who are sometimes the most destructive.
That's on both sides.
That's on both sides, absolutely, 100%. And so I would just say to everybody, incentivize what you want to see, like reward what you want to see. Support the people who are trying to not be part of the problem, right? And if you don't like it, get involved. President Obama used to tell us that the most important office in the country isn't president or senator or congressman, it's citizen, right? Democracy is not a spectator sport. You're not watching two teams play it out. You're actually one of the players on the field, right? And you can either choose to sit it out or you can get involved. And I know it's ugly. I mean, I trust me, I know it is. And my last campaign, they called me everything but a son of God, right? You know what I mean? But so I get it. But we can't check out, because I had a coach who used to always say, and I never understood what he meant really. When all the good ones leave, all we have left is the bad ones, right? Because they're not leaving,
right?
You know what I mean? So you can't check out. And I would just say, I just think it's still within reach for us to fix this, right? And we're a great country.
Yeah, we are.
And we got a lot of great people. Y'all know through your own charitable work, like these unsung heroes, people are doing amazing things in their community, right? You come across them and you think, this is an incredible person. We should be lifting this person up, right? More people should know about this. That's who we are, right? And I think we just have to incentivize what we want to see and fix this kind of structure that we have right now where, the worst things get the most attention.
Is that hard to do in the sense of specifically speaking about the running your campaign?
Yeah.
Is it hard? Like you came into this room, Pino, what's up, Rome? What's up? Like we dab each other up, we kick it, we cool, we eat steaks, we play golf.
Yeah.
But I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, or vice versa, whatever. And we get in front of the camera. And now it's like, well, Colin, Colin slept with 72 women his first year, and now he's trying to be a son of, he loves abortion. He's had 17 of them. And then the campaign's over, and it's like, oh man, that was great. Hey, you want to go grab a beer? And we all buddy, and we friends now. Like, to me,
that has had to have happened.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
But I just don't know, like. I don't even know what my question is, because it's so frustrating to see how the show horse, and they're just so rah, 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 rah. And it's like, really? Now you want to be my friend, but you put me on blast, and you're making all this stuff up?
Right.
Like, how difficult is it to be around that atmosphere or that culture?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because
you don't strike me as, you strike me as just like, hey, look, I'm here to do a job.
Yeah.
I want to do my job. I want to do what's right.
Yeah.
If I side with the Democrats, cool. If I side with the Republicans and it makes sense, cool. Let's just get the job done. Like you you're very just black or white. This is what it is. Let's just get it done.
I mean, what are we really doing?
Yeah.
Like we're funding like roads and bridges and like the military and like health insurance for people. Like this is not you're not having like your culture war, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like leave that, out. But I agree with you, man. I think you'd see these people who had been a part of, who'd campaigned with your opponent or something, and then they want to come and talk to you. And it's like, I saw what you said, you know what I mean? But I also would think, to me at least, and I think some people take it much more personally. I think what they really wanted was the power, right? They didn't really care about me. I was in the way of them getting that power, right? And that would kind of free me from seeing it as personal. I do think that some things would cross the line at times, and you know how we are, like, don't cross the line, right? But by and large, most of what I've experienced has just been a bunch of nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Like, like just kind of like make up stuff that's not, and it's like, okay, you're just trying to get power.
Okay.
And I can at least put that into a kind of a side bucket and say, we're not going to be friends, right? Like we're not going to be cool, but we can work together.
Yeah.
And I that's one thing that is different, of course, about football. Like, and especially in the league, like, I would just never try and hurt one of our guys, right? Like I might be playing with them next week,
right.
And I would see some guys who I thought were trying to do that. And I'd think, what are you doing? Like we're playing a sport, like we are professionals. We're not trying to take people out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And of course we're aggressive. Of course. And we want to put that big hit on you, but okay, come on, get up, let's go, And I think that, politics, as I said, has gotten to a place to where it's all about just pushing an agenda instead of about the people. And if we can get it back a little bit more, and I know it's not really possible to just reset things, but if you can just have a slight adjustment to where people feel like it's more about the people than the politicians, then I think you'll see people be less cynical and more interested too. And that I think will help the whole democracy.
So I got to know this because you brought up campaigning.
Yeah.
Number one, are you running for the U.S. Senate in 2026?
Yeah.
Number two, what is the hardest part about campaigning for you, or is it harder on your family? Because I can only imagine
That's right.
Like what gets heard and told to the kids.
That's right.
Which is what you said you're most proud of.
Yeah.
So far as being a father, your best accomplishment.
That's right. The truth is, I haven't decided.
Okay.
On the Senate run, and
that was a very political answer.
Yeah, that's right. You did good. You did good. I've been like the primary parent.
Okay.
Since I left the Congress, and because my wife's a lawyer, she's way smarter than me. Like I outkicked my coverage. You know what I mean? Like
good
a
job.
lot of us.
We
did.
all have.
Yeah.
We all did.
Good job.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've just been loving my time with my boys.
That's awesome.
And because every election season, we can't watch TV. You know why? Because every commercial is going to be about me.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yes.
And then they messed up because then they started being on YouTube too. So we couldn't even watch YouTube. And I was like, man, we're going to
they pop up.
Yeah, they
YouTube
pop up.
ads. YouTube ads pop up.
It's like, man, there's no safe haven.
No.
And my boys are like, oh, I see data. And I'm like, that's an attack ad. Don't look, son.
That's not the good commercial.
Yeah, right. And so the hardest part for me though is the time away from the kids, and I went 5 weeks in the last campaign without seeing my kids. And that was really hard for me.
And you're just all over
all over the state.
Your state. Just
traveling, and it just didn't work out we couldn't get back to see him, and and that was hard for me, and I wouldn't do that again. That was the longest I've gone without seeing them. But I mean, the real work is being done by my wife at home, where she's largely a single parent while I'm out campaigning. And we do this together though. We decide to run together, and so it's a partnership. And she believes in what we're doing, and she knows that this is her way of serving too, right? Is that she's gonna make sure these kids are getting to school and getting their meals and getting their baths in and all that. And so, that to me, I think, since I grew up without a father, that's been the one thing I constantly think: am I balancing this right?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think if I'd had kids in the league, I would have felt the same way. Like, am I balancing this right? Because I was so obsessed.
Yeah, you have to
in
be
the league. Like, you go home, I'm watching at that time tape, film. I mean, but and you come in, I'm the first one in the building, one of the last ones leaving, right? That's how I made it, but I didn't have kids at the time, and so now I do, and I constantly think, am I balancing this right? Because when I finally go, I don't think the first thing at least for me, the last thing I think about is going to be the campaigns and the hands I shook or whatever. It's going to be about my family, and I don't want to regret that. And I think I'm getting it right, but I'm constantly making that calculation.
Yeah, it's constantly pouring in back.
Exactly,
cups, right,
exactly,
for the balance.
Yeah,
I got a sidebar question.
Let's do it.
When you shake hands and you shaking hands and kissing babies, when you shake a white guy's hand, is it like this? Hey, how's it going? Appreciate your vote. And then when there's a black guy, just like, my dog, what's up? Bring it in right here. Is there any of that going on?
That's the
Obama's got caught on tape so many times.
So many times.
He's
the best person to ever do it, though.
You know what the peanut though? I actually think it's just it's the way they put their hand out.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm just saying
it's their fault.
No. Okay.
We putting it on them.
Like we start like this.
Yeah, it's different. I agree.
You know what I mean? But there'll be some.
It's straight out there.
There'll be some guys with some flavor to them. You know what I mean?
You.
And they'll come in like that too. So I'm like, hey, all right, we're good. Let's go.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So, obviously, playing football, I had my kids when I played, and
that's hilarious.
The majority of my kids were born during the season.
Yeah. Okay.
So it made it kind of hard for me to stay up all night and do the night feedings and whatnot.
No.
And players aren't getting paternity leave.
Nope.
Like it's coach, I need a day. Like
no, you don't get off on Thanksgiving. You working on Christmas.
Yes,
that's right. You're working.
That's right.
They don't care. Is it true? Were you the first congressman to take paternity leave?
Yeah, I was.
That's dope.
It's funny. My first start was on Christmas. That's my first ever start at NFL.
That's what
happens. I'm sitting there. I'm great. I'm out here with Daniel Tomlinson. They're like LT.
Yeah,
right.
Because he's from Waco. Anyway, no, I was the first one to ever take paternity leave, which is really weird because I did it in 2019.
Did they have paternity leave?
No.
Oh, they didn't have it.
No,
then.
I just took it.
You just took it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, I'm my own boss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, my boss is the people, right? So I wrote an op-ed in the Dallas Morning News saying this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some time to be with my child. And I think every man should. Because there's a lot of research out there actually about this. It says that when men have time with their babies, it's better outcomes for the man themselves, for their children, and for their spouses, right? There's more sharing of the workload, but they also get an appreciation for their child, and it's really important bonding time, right? And I was working on trying to make sure that everybody in the country could have paid leave, time to take off to be with their family, right? And that was what, and I was actually working with the Trump administration at the time. Ivanka Trump was interested in this, and I went to the White House, did an event with her, Democrat there, but hey, they're trying to work on what I wanted to work on, let's do it. We're here. And so I wrote an op-ed, and I was worried a little bit that the reaction was going to be real negative. It's like, well, you didn't have the baby, you know what I mean? Like, what you need time off for? But it was very positive. Yeah, it was very positive. And people would come up to me and say, thank you so much for highlighting, men's work in this, for men's role in this. And I was really impressed by it because I think there were a lot of people who, in some ways in their professions, even though it's not football, might feel like they can't take time off too, right? But they want to. And I think we have to build kind of a culture where it's expected that an addition to your family like this is a big disruption. Yeah. You're going to be a better worker if you've had time to get that right before you come back to work. Right. Right. And companies that do this see more productivity from their workers. They retain their workers better. It's a good idea.
It's a great idea.
Right. And actually every developed country in the world has some form of this except for us. Right. So it's something we should do. But I was surprised. The press had to tell me I was the first because I wasn't trying to be the first. I just thought, well, let's just do it. And the reaction, like I said, was surprising.
Yeah, I don't think my dad took time off. That's why we're not close. He doesn't like me. Dad, I'm joking. That was a joke, Pops. That was a joke.
Well, Colin, man, dude, I kind of want to ask one more and let you get the last one. Is that okay?
Yes, okay? It's okay. Thomas didn't say nothing.
Okay, good. Well, we're just not gonna have a lot of Congress people in. Like, we don't get to do this.
We don't.
I'm overexcited.
Take advantage of it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, when you were in the Congress, when did you see somebody, and I don't want you don't have to say names.
Please don't.
Let us guess. But did you ever see like, man, that was like real theater? Like, were you impressed? Were you like, wow? Like, and then maybe somebody, because in football, you see somebody ahead of you that does something, you're like, dude, I need to model my game after
That's
him.
right. That's right.
Like,
that's right.
Could I get one of each of those examples?
Yeah, and that's such good. That's good, Rome. So one time, and I won't say the name, but I kind of want to, but
say it.
So Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
He's on the House floor, and he's talking to this other Republican, and he said, "That's why you're not going to be in the A block tonight." What does that mean? If you do TV, you know what this means. The A block is the first part of the show, right?
Yes.
That's also the part of the show if you're on a political show where you're the star of the night, right? And he said, well, that's why you're not going to be on. He's like talking smack to this other guy, being like, that's why you ain't going to be on the A block tonight, right? And I will, because I did, look at this stunt that I did, right? And so they're actually thinking about, how could I get this attention? It's not about if it's a good idea to do or not. Right, it's just this is how I'm gonna get that attention.
Just theater.
It's just theater, and I was like, "Wow, you're really here for that?" I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like the pay, isn't worth it. Like the travel isn't worth it. I think that would be a strange decision to make. But then there are also people you'd see who would take a principled stand on something, and even though it's going to be tough for them, or really even at least politically deadly for them, to say, I'm not cool with that. And I saw that from Liz Cheney, another Republican. On January 6th, the mob was attacking the Capitol. I'm the only former NFL linebacker in the room. Everybody's like, what you gonna do, Colin? I'm like, okay, well, so I took off my suit jacket. I'm like, I guess I'll hold this door. Yeah. And y'all try and get out that one. This is real.
Yeah.
And
why did we not ask him about this yet?
and I'm because I remember several people were like, I'm gonna be behind you. I'm like, okay, that's gonna do a lot of good. I could take out one or two at a time. That's about it. And we got out of there thanks to the bravery of the police that day. And a lot of them were hurt real bad. And I knew some of those guys because they defend us, and we got relationships with our security folks, and so we got into this room, and Liz Cheney came up to me and Akeem Jeffries, and she said, we need to impeach him tomorrow for this. She's a Republican. This is death for her, politically speaking. She didn't care. And she didn't change on that. She lost her next election because of that, but she didn't change the whole time. And she kept saying the same thing, which is, I'm a Republican. I'm conservative as anybody. My dad is Dick Cheney. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you find somebody more conservative than me.
And the things she had voted on in her career had reflected that is
like in the Dave Chappelle skit when they were playing against Prince, like, find him. I'll beat him too. You know what I mean? Like, she was like, find him. Find somebody more conservative. You ain't gonna find him, right?
Right.
She's like, but what I don't agree with is this, that we're gonna have mob attacking the Capitol and trying to overturn elections. That I can't go with you on that. And I saw that, and you think there's something worse than losing an election. It's losing your dignity. Right? You can lose an election, just don't lose your spirit, your soul, your dignity. Right? And so there's examples of both.
Nice. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's the first time I told that story, by the way.
It's a great story.
It is.
Yeah. You told it well. So last question. Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
You get 4 people of influence from the time you were born till today. Who would those 4 people be?
I'd love to know y'all's, but my mom, it was tough, right? Like, we don't pay our teachers enough, right?
I agree.
And she was working full time as a teacher and still having to pick up a second job, and like that's just not right, right? And I that's something I just carried with me always is these teachers are taking care of our kids. We can all think about our favorite teacher when you close your eyes, and he or she was important to you in some way in your life, and then we're not treating them right. Right? When they retire, the retirement isn't good enough, right? So my mom, she put in those hard years, and I helped buy her a house when I was, so she had rented the house for 20 years that I helped her buy, right? When I got to the league, and that's something I'm proud of. I had a principal who just for whatever reason, she had crossed over from middle school to high school with me. So she had me for 6 years. You know, I was class president, but I was also a little bit of goofball. And
did she drive you to school?
No, she didn't.
Okay, because I was like, but you can't be riding with moms to school.
No, I would take.
I
took the bus, or I had like a carpool thing.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, but my principal, her name was Vicky Ritchie, and I got to see her again a few months ago at church, and she still looks the same actually. But she had me for 6 years, and she just give me a look sometimes when I was acting up.
You just know
and
that
I was like, oh, Miss Ritchie saw me, you know. And she was somebody who I just didn't want to disappoint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she was one of these, you know, kind of strong black women who just kind of made you feel like, all right, I can't, whatever I do, I can't get on Miss Ritchie's bad side. And I really think that part of why I'm here is because of Miss Ritchie, right? Yeah. You know, I got to give Coach Mack, who's my coach, Mack at Titans, who was my linebacker coach. Dave McGinnis is his full name, but we always called him Coach Mack. You know, he believed in me when, you know, I think no one else did. And he saw some value in me. And he wasn't like the mentor type. He wouldn't say as much to you, but then sometimes he would do things that you just knew how much he cared, you know. And it made you feel like, okay, I'm you know, you can run through a wall for this guy, right? And he was funny as anything. I mean, the film room was hilarious. You know, he'd get that laser pointer and just anything, you know, would be. And he would use me sometimes to tell like Keith Bullock what to do, because I would be like behind Keith. That's
what they all do.
Yeah.
I mean, I go coach at the vet. I coach the vet by talking to the young boys.
The young guy. That's right. He'd be like, you see this, Colin? You see? I'm like, he's talking to Keith. He ain't talking to me. You're not talking to me. You know. But he gave me a shot, and I really appreciate that. And the last one. There was a counselor at the YMCA. I went to a YMCA after school care program, right? So I go to school in elementary. My mom couldn't get me till later, so I went to after school. And there was this 6'6" former college basketball player named Derek Smith, who was a counselor at the Y, and I just wanted to be just like him. You know, like I was like, you know, 7, 8, 9. I didn't know my dad, right? And I just thought that would be the coolest thing ever, just be able to dunk. You know, like I was like, he'd just be out there dunking on us, you know. And he was a good athlete, you know, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to be. And we stayed friends. I've met him. I think I met Derek when I was 8 or 9. We're still friends right now, right? We still awesome. Text, right? And he was in when I first ran for Congress, he was in my launch video, like, you know, the video when I launched my campaign. And he's, you know, he never made any money working at the YMCA, right? You know, but it meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
You know. And I did finally get to dunk at one point.
There it is.
I can't do it anymore. I don't know about you, Rome.
I'm still dunking at 44.
Nah, bro, I played pickup.
I'm still dunking at 44.
I played pickup like 6 months ago, bro. I'm not dunking no more.
Yeah.
I'm a finger roll guy.
Finger roll.
I'm a finger roll guy.
Okay, Iceman.
Yeah, Iceman.
I'm a finger roll guy.
Yeah, so that's my Mount Rushmore. Yeah.
That's a good mount.
Yeah. That is, man.
Appreciate you coming on the pod.
Thank you, brothers. Yeah.
Colin,
some
man,
great stories.
Man, great stories, great time.
And y'all were great players. I just love that. You were such great players.
Thank you.
You know, I was somebody who just contributed what I could, but I watched y'all, and you know, we have defense. You know, we watch defense.
Yeah,
and you played the right way. You're good brothers. I'm glad to be here with you.
Thank
you.
Yeah. We really appreciate that, man. Look, I loved your Mount Rushmore because it was. I'll be honest with you. I don't think we've ever had anybody talk about from a principal to a person that worked at the Y that they just happen to look up to. Nobody that's just a superstar, somebody that you would immediately know. And so that kind of tells me who you are as a person. The people that poured into when you were a young man, you never forgot them. You've never forgotten who you were. And it's kind of led you down this path of wherever your life is. And it's kind of taken you to all these different walks of life and these different rooms. And great stories, man. Continue to pour into the rest of the world.
We
need it.
Thank you.
We need people like you to continue to do what you've been able to do and accomplish the things that you've been able to accomplish. So
thanks, man.
Continue to do that.
Appreciate
I can't vote in Texas, but if I could, I would. You got my vote.
Peanut, you're coming back.
I'm coming back.
That's how people get locked up now. You can't be voting in multiple states.
I'm not voting multiple states. I didn't say that. I said
he said he can't.
I can't vote. I said I can't vote.
you did
but if
it
I
off the
could,
bat.
you got it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I appreciate it.
I'm a spiritual vote.
We're going to decide if he's going to run for anything else soon. And Colin, hopefully you share with us.
Yeah.
If you do, we'll put it out there. Make sure we will continue to promote, man, because you are one of us as a former NFL alumni, all the same. You know, it's just a small
And when I see you in the house, I'm adapt. I'm gonna put it up here.
I'm
coming out. I'm coming out here.
We learned something new today too. It's all about how you present
how you
it.
approach.
How you approach it is everything.
Shout out. So this is PSA to all the Caucasian congressmen out there. If you want the Obama,
that's right.
Bring it out. Don't do this.
Come out like this.
You got to come out like this, and then the fellow brother congressman or
Whoever
politician, he gonna give you that love. So I'm just throwing it out there.
That's right. That's right.
That's beautiful, man. All right, learn something new every day. All right, man. For all of our listeners and viewers out there, man, thank you so much for always tuning in. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating, a review, leave a couple comments, share, subscribe. All those other things. Wherever you pick up your podcast at, whether it's iHeartRadio or the Apple Podcast app, please tell a friend to do what, Peanut?
Tell a friend.
There we go, man. Get us up out of here, bro.
Don't forget to check us out on our NFL YouTube channel as well.
That's new.
Hey, look, I'm Peanut. That's Colin. That's Rome. Hey, y'all, we out. And this is the NFL Players Second Accent Podcast.